Hey kids, gather around now. I'm going to tell you a story. An amazing guy that I remember, Eric B. Hare, was a storyteller, and he told a story that I've never forgotten, and I'm going to tell it to you today. It's a story of Bunny and Jim. Now, Bunny was the name of the boy, a cripple. He had a cane or a device under his arm, a crutch, and he had a dog, a mongrel dog named Jim. Bunny limped to the side of the curb after church and cried, "My friends will have some. All of my neighbors that go to church will have some, but I'll have nothing for offering for those boys and girls over in Africa that need so much to hear the gospel. They can mow lawns, they can do chores, and they can raise money, but I can raise no money." And as he sat there on the curb, he looked at Jimmy, his dog, and his dog was so happy to see. They were such devoted to each other. And as he's sitting there, he says, "Jim, I got to do it. I got to sell you in order that you can make some money to send to those boys and girls in Africa. I don't want to sell you." Well, of course, Jimmy knew nothing about it. So Bunny goes home and he talks to Mom, and Mom says, "You don't want to sell your dog. He's your companion. He goes with you all the time." But he insisted, and finally he said, "Well, just go down the street to the pet shop and talk to the man at the pet shop." And so Bunny did that, and he took Jim in, and he said, "Sir, I want to sell my dog." And the man says, "Why do you want to sell your dog? He's your companion. He's your friend." He says, I want to send some money to kids that don't know Jesus and that need food and clothing." And he said, "You forget about all those kids," the proprietor said. "You need that dog a lot worse than they need a little money." Jim, again, limped outside and cried. Then he prayed, "God, I don't have just a useless mongrel dog. I know you can make Jim worth something. Please make him worth something." And after he'd prayed, of course, he felt a lot better, and he went home. And Mom said, "We need a loaf of bread 2 blocks down, and you can go down and get it. And meanwhile, you can look in the store windows as you go downtown, and then give me the loaf of bread." And so Bunny whistles to Jim, and off they went into town. And the first store he stopped at was the hardware store. And then he went to the next store, which was a toy store. He stopped there and looked at all the toys. But he knew he wasn't going to spend any money on toys, not when boys and girls needed money over in Africa. And then he was at the grocery store. He went in, bought the loaf of bread, tucked it under his arm, and went back out, looked across the street, and there was the jeweler store with all the clocks and watches, diamonds and pearls glittering in the window. And so he crossed the road very carefully after looking both ways. And he went across, and he's looking in the window at all the watches. He had always wanted a watch. He had always wanted something like this. And so he just was sitting there dreaming. But of course, he needed the money for missions. No money for watches here. And then he noticed some very glittering objects around the corner, right where the door was. And the glass was there, and he was looking at it, when suddenly a man brushed past him and knocks him over onto the ground. And he said, "Get out of my way, kid. Don't you see that I'm in a hurry?" And he went into the store and pulled his gun out to hold up the jewelry store. Well, Jimmy the dog, he may have been a mongrel dog, but he wasn't going to let anyone treat Bunny that way. And he got all of his fox terrier and all of his Boston bull and whatever else he had together, and he went after him and grabbed his leg. The man tried to shake him off, but the jaws were Boston bull jaws, and they wouldn't let go. He tried to push him off, but he had too much terrier, and he never was in the same place at the same time. A crowd began to gather while this man and the dog fought. By this time, Bunny got up, and a police car pulled up. Stopped. A policeman got out, grabbed the man with the gun, and said, "You come with me." And he put him in the car. And Bunny was still wondering about what was all about when the owner of the store came out and said, "I want to thank you and your dog. Your dog held on to that man just enough time for me to call the police. And he was not able to steal anything. Come back in the back of my store. I'd like to talk with you." And so Bunny whistled to Jim, and he and the dog went to the back, and he said, "I want to give you a reward. You have a wonderful dog there, and he saved our store from a robbery." And suddenly, Bunny broke down and cried. He grabbed Jim the dog, and he held him tight, and he said, "You are worth something. You are worth something. Jesus made you worth something." And guess what? When Sabbath came, he had his offering. And Jimmy, the dog, had found his worth. I hope you kids remember to pray. Remember the story of Bunny and Jim.